You think you know the law? You've probably broken 3 of them already today without realizing it. Stuff so normal, you'd never guess it's illegal in parts of America. Things you do at home, in your car, even at a party with friends, could legally get you fined or worse, and almost nobody knows it. Texting at a red light? Illegal. Letting your kid walk to the corner store like it's 1995? Illegal. Even your harmless backyard rainwater barrel could land you a fine. You've been breaking laws since breakfast and bragging about it on Instagram. Stick around. By the end of this list, you'll question literally everything. Subscribe before you accidentally break another law just reading this. 1. Eyeglasses sitting in a drawer can look like easy cash once someone lists them online. In Ohio, a retired teacher cleaned out her closet and posted a barely used pair of prescription sunglasses for $10. She figured it was free money waiting to happen. What she never realized is that prescription lenses count as regulated medical devices under federal law. Reselling them without proper licensing can technically break FDA resale rules. The buyer could end up wearing someone else's exact prescription without knowing it. That is exactly why regulators take this more seriously than people expect. A forgotten pair of glasses everyone assumes is just plastic, and glass gets treated more like surgical equipment than a fashion accessory. 2. Catching someone's confession on tape feels like winning an argument instantly. In California, a frustrated tenant hit record during a heated phone call with a roommate. Instead, the recording itself became the actual crime. He was certain the audio would finally settle a months-long dispute. California is a 2-party consent state, and that means everyone on a call must agree before being recorded. Skipping that step turns an ordinary smartphone into an illegal wiretap under state law. Prosecutors have pursued felony charges over recordings far less dramatic than blackmail or threats. The twist nobody expects is that the so-called proof can backfire completely and hand legal trouble straight to the person who pressed record. 3. A streaming password shared with a friend across town feels completely harmless. A college student in Texas handed his Disney Plus login to a buddy who lived in a different apartment entirely. Neither one thought twice about it since millions of people do the exact same thing daily. Yet some legal interpretations treat that kind of account sharing as a violation of federal computer fraud law. The law was originally written to stop hackers from breaking into systems they had no right to access. Sharing a login was never the intended target, but the wording is broad enough to apply anyway, so a simple favor between friends technically brushes against the same statute used to prosecute serious cybercrime cases. 4. Spotting a crisp $20 bill on the sidewalk feels like a tiny stroke of luck. A man walking through downtown Chicago found one fluttering near a bus stop and pocketed it without a second thought. Most people would do exactly the same thing without ever imagining a problem. Yet many states actually have laws requiring a genuine attempt to locate the original owner before keeping found money or property. Skipping that step technically counts as theft of lost property under certain state codes. Police rarely chase down sidewalk cash cases, but the law on the books does not care about likelihood of enforcement. That lucky $20 bill carries more legal weight than anyone walking past it would ever guess. 5. Slipping on flip-flops before a road trip seems like the most relaxed choice imaginable. A vacationer in Florida cruised down the highway in sandals, certain that comfort came with zero consequences. Driving barefoot itself is not illegal in any state despite popular belief. Flip-flops are a different story entirely since some states can issue a citation for unsafe footwear behind the wheel. Officers argue that loose sandals can slip off the pedal or get wedged beneath it at the worst possible moment. A relaxed beach day outfit can quietly turn into a traffic stop nobody saw coming. The footwear everyone associates with vacation freedom is the exact thing that can end a road trip early. 6. Swapping a real name for a fake one on a rewards card sounds like a victimless prank. A shopper in Arizona used a joke name every time he signed up for grocery store discount cards just for laughs. It felt like a harmless way to dodge junk mail and telemarketing calls. The catch is that once a fake identity gets tied to actual discounts or coupons, it can legally count as fraud. Retailers track those rewards programs closely because real money and savings is changing hands under a false name. What started as a silly alias for free deals can technically become a fraud investigation. A goofy made-up name at checkout carries more legal risk than anyone swiping their card would expect. 7. Heating up leftover salmon in a shared office kitchen seems like an innocent lunch break decision. An employee in New York City popped fish into the break room microwave without thinking twice about the smell. Coworkers further down the hall immediately noticed and were not thrilled about it. There is no specific fish microwave law on the books anywhere. In New York City, workplace complaints about noxious odors can actually be formally reported and addressed through office policy or building management. A simple lunch decision can spiral into an HR conversation nobody expected. The smell drifting through the hallway turned an ordinary midday meal into the most talked about incident of the entire week. 8. Leaning on a car horn out of pure frustration feels like a natural reaction to city traffic. A cab driver stuck in Manhattan gridlock blasted his horn repeatedly just to vent his frustration at the cars ahead. Almost every driver nearby has done something similar at some point. New York City actually bans horn honking for any reason outside of an immediate emergency or unavoidable accident. Officers can and do issue tickets for excessive or unnecessary honking under the city's noise code. That instinctive release of road rage carries a real fine attached to it. A city famous for its constant noise still draws a surprisingly strict legal line around one specific honk. 9. Pulling into a gas station and reaching for the pump feels like second nature almost everywhere in America. A traveler from California drove into New Jersey for the first time and immediately stepped out to fuel up his own car. An attendant rushed over before he could even touch the nozzle. Pumping your own gas is fully illegal in both New Jersey and Oregon, with no exceptions made for convenience or impatience. Attendants are required by state law to handle the entire process themselves from start to finish. What feels like basic independence in most states becomes someone else's job the moment you cross certain state lines. That one simple act reveals just how different state laws can be from coast to coast. 10. Choosing a bold new paint color feels like a personal decision about a personal home. A homeowner in suburban Georgia repainted her front door a bright turquoise just because she liked the way it looked. Neighbors complimented it instantly, and she assumed the matter was settled. Her homeowners association disagreed completely since the color violated an approved palette buried deep in the community guidelines. HOAs can issue real fines for unapproved exterior changes, and repeated violations can even lead to property liens. That cheerful turquoise door ended up costing far more than the can of paint itself. A simple aesthetic choice turned into a months-long dispute over rules she never knew existed. 11. Setting up a rain barrel feels like a smart, eco-friendly move for any backyard gardener. A homeowner in Colorado installed one beneath her gutter, specifically to water her vegetable garden during dry summer months. She had no idea she was stepping into murky legal territory. Parts of Colorado and Utah have historically restricted or outright banned collecting rainwater because of old water rights laws tied to rivers and streams. Those laws assume rain belongs to downstream users long before it ever reaches a backyard barrel. What seemed like simple conservation actually challenges a water ownership system dating back over a century. Her tomatoes got watered just fine, but the barrel itself sat in a legal gray zone the entire summer. 12. Letting a dog stretch its legs in an open field feels like the most natural thing in the world. A jogger in Minnesota unclipped her golden retriever's leash the moment she reached a wide, grassy park with nobody else in sight. She figured empty space meant freedom from the rules. Most cities enforce leash laws across the entire public park, regardless of how open or empty the area looks at any given moment. Officers can issue citations even when no other people or dogs are nearby to be bothered. The dog had the time of his life sprinting in circles, completely unaware he was technically breaking a city ordinance. Empty space turned out to mean nothing when it came to the actual leash law written on the books. 13. Sharing a jug of fresh milk straight from the farm sounds like the most wholesome transaction imaginable. A small dairy farmer in Pennsylvania sold raw, unpasteurized milk directly to a neighbor down the road as a simple favor between friends. Both assumed nothing could possibly go wrong with milk that fresh. Over 20 states actually banned the retail sale of raw milk, specifically because of bacteria risks like Salmonella and E. coli that pasteurization normally eliminates. What felt like an old-fashioned neighborly exchange is treated by regulators as a genuine public health hazard. The farmer never intended harm and the neighbor never got sick, but the transaction itself sat well outside the legal lines drawn by the state. 14. Bringing a beloved pet into a restaurant feels impossible to resist for plenty of devoted owners. A man in Florida brought his small terrier into a no-pets cafe by simply calling it an emotional support animal at the door. Staff let him in without asking a single follow-up question. Misrepresenting an ordinary pet as a legitimate service animal actually counts as fraud under the Americans with Disabilities Act in most states across the country. Genuine service animals receive specific legal protections that emotional claims alone cannot replicate or substitute. That sweet little terrier enjoyed a quiet lunch, completely unaware his owner had just crossed into fraudulent territory. The label slapped on a vest carries far more legal weight than most pet owners ever realize. 15. Slipping on a costume mask during a public demonstration feels like simple anonymity to plenty of protesters. A demonstrator in Georgia wore a full face covering to a rally hoping to avoid being identified on camera by anyone nearby. He assumed a mask was just a mask in any context. Several states still enforce old anti-mask laws, originally written decades ago specifically to stop Ku Klux Klan members from hiding their identities during intimidation campaigns. Those laws never got repealed and can still apply broadly to public gatherings today, regardless of original intent. What felt like harmless privacy protection actually triggered a law built around a very different and darker chapter of American history. 16. Tossing breadcrumbs to pigeons in a public square feels like the most relaxing way to spend a lunch break. A retiree in California sat on a bench in a busy plaza and fed an entire bag of birdseed to the gathering flock around his feet. Pigeons surrounded him within minutes, like old friends greeting a regular. Many cities, including parts of California, have banned public pigeon feeding entirely because of nuisance complaints involving droppings noise and property damage nearby. Officers occasionally issue citations to repeat offenders who ignore posted warning signs in popular plazas. That peaceful bench moment sat right at the center of a surprisingly enforced city ordinance most visitors never even notice exists. 17. Flipping on the interior dome light during a late-night drive feels like an easy way to find a dropped phone. A driver in Illinois reached for his cracked screen on the passenger floor and switched on the cabin light while still cruising down the highway. He figured a little extra light could not possibly cause trouble. Several states actually ban driving with interior lights on while the vehicle is in motion because it creates glare and distracts surrounding drivers at night. Officers can pull drivers over specifically for this exact violation, even without any other traffic infraction involved. That harmless-looking light switch turned a simple search for a phone into an unexpected and fully ticketable distraction hazard. 18. Knocking on doors to sell cookies feels like the most innocent tradition in American childhood. A young scout in Ohio walked her neighborhood selling boxes of Thin Mints alongside her proud mother, trailing a few steps behind. Neither one thought twice about needing any kind of official paperwork. Some towns actually require a peddler's license for any kind of door-to-door sales, including charitable fundraisers run by children and community groups. Most towns quietly look the other way, but a few have issued warnings or fines to organizers over the years. That wholesome cookie sale tradition technically brushes against permit laws originally designed for traveling salesmen decades before Girl Scouts ever existed. 19. Flying a drone over the backyard fence feels like the perfect way to capture a cool aerial video. A hobbyist in Texas launched his new drone specifically to film his neighbor's pool party from above for what he thought would be an epic shot. He never asked permission first. Most states enforce privacy laws that restrict aerial filming over private property without the owner's explicit consent, regardless of how good the footage looks. Neighbors can pursue legal action for invasion of privacy, even if the footage was never shared publicly online. That impressive overhead shot turned into an awkward confrontation the moment the drone's buzzing engine drew everyone's attention upward toward the sky. 20. Sending a child to the corner store alone feels like a normal rite of passage to plenty of parents. A mother in South Carolina let her 10-year-old walk 2 blocks to buy milk, just like she remembered doing herself decades earlier. She thought nothing of it at all. Certain states have actually opened neglect investigations against parents over unsupervised outings like this, depending on the child's age and surrounding circumstances. Well-meaning neighbors sometimes call authorities, believing they are protecting a child who was never actually in danger. A simple errand rooted in nostalgic memory became a tense, legal conversation nobody in the family ever expected to have over a carton of milk. 21. Tossing leftover chicken bones into a backyard compost bin feels like responsible environmental behavior to most home gardeners. A retiree in Washington dumped steak scraps and bones into her compost pile, believing she was simply reducing kitchen waste. She had no idea she was breaking a local ordinance. Many municipalities ban composting meat or dairy scraps specifically because decomposing animal matter attracts rats, raccoons, and other unwanted pests into residential neighborhoods. City inspectors occasionally respond to pest complaints that trace directly back to backyard compost piles. Her eco-friendly habit ended up drawing more rodents than roses, and a quiet warning letter eventually landed in her mailbox. 22. Glancing down at a phone while sitting still at a red light feels completely harmless to most drivers. A commuter in Florida checked a text message during a long red light, believing his car being stopped made the action perfectly legal. Seconds later, an officer pulled alongside him. Most states classify texting behind the wheel as illegal, regardless of whether the car is moving or fully stopped at an intersection. Distracted driving laws specifically target phone use anytime the engine is running and the driver is technically in control of the vehicle. That quick glance at an incoming text turned into an expensive ticket and a lecture about distracted driving he never saw coming. 23. Flipping concert tickets for double the original price feels like smart hustling to plenty of resellers. A fan in New Jersey bought several tickets to a sold-out show specifically planning to resell them online for a serious profit. He assumed supply and demand made it fair game. New Jersey, along with states like Massachusetts, actually bans reselling tickets above their original face value under specific consumer protection laws. Scalping laws exist to prevent exactly this kind of markup scheme from exploiting eager fans desperate for sold-out shows. His profitable side hustle quietly violated state law the entire time he listed those tickets for sale online. 24. Slapping a handwritten for sale sign in a car window feels like the easiest advertising trick imaginable. A man in California parked his old sedan along a busy street downtown with a bright sign taped across the windshield. He figured free parking meant free advertising too. Several cities classify parked vehicles displaying for sale signs as illegal advertising, specifically because it clutters public streets meant for actual parking rather than makeshift dealerships. Parking enforcement officers can ticket or even tow vehicles used this way under local ordinances. His clever sales strategy ended up costing him a fine that easily outpaced whatever profit the car was ever going to bring in. 25. Wrapping string lights around the strip of grass near the curb feels like decorating your own front yard. A homeowner in Texas strung up festive lights along the small patch of lawn between his sidewalk and the street every single December. He always assumed that grass belonged to him. That narrow strip is actually city-owned property in most municipalities, and decorating or altering it can technically require a permit. Cities maintain the right to access that land for utility work, sewer lines, or sidewalk repairs at any time without warning. His cheerful holiday display sat squarely on land he never legally owned, despite mowing it faithfully every single weekend for years. 26. Snapping a candid photo of a stranger on a busy street feels like harmless everyday photography. A photographer in New York captured a striking image of a man walking through Times Square and later used it in a paid advertising campaign without ever asking permission. He assumed public space meant fair game. Most states enforce right of publicity laws that prevent someone's likeness from being used commercially without explicit consent, regardless of where the photo was originally taken. That stranger never agreed to promote anything, yet his face ended up plastered across an ad campaign he knew nothing about until a friend spotted it and called him immediately. 27. Setting up a lemonade stand on the sidewalk feels like the most innocent business venture a child could ever attempt. A young girl in Texas sold lemonade outside her house one summer afternoon with a handwritten sign and a cash box made from an old cereal container. Police actually showed up that same day. Multiple states have issued real citations to lemonade stands over the years for operating without the required food vendor permits, typically reserved for actual restaurants and food trucks. What felt like a sweet childhood tradition occasionally collides head-on with health code regulations nobody ever expects to apply to a folding table and a pitcher of lemonade. 28. Leaving a car running in the driveway to warm it up feels like basic winter common sense. A commuter in Minnesota started his engine and walked back inside for 10 minutes while the frost melted off his windshield in the freezing morning air. He never imagined a problem. Many cold weather states actually ban leaving a vehicle unattended while running, specifically to prevent theft and reduce unnecessary emissions sitting idle in driveways and parking lots. Officers in several cities issue real tickets every winter for exactly this scenario, regardless of how cold the morning happens to be. His harmless warm-up routine turned into a surprisingly common and expensive seasonal citation. 29. Walking into a store just to use the restroom feels like a basic courtesy most businesses should offer. A traveler in Texas ducked into a convenience store specifically to use the bathroom without buying a single item off the shelves. An employee stopped him before he reached the door. Businesses can legally deny restroom access to non-paying customers in most states, despite the common belief that public restrooms are some kind of guaranteed right. Store owners cite liability and cleanliness concerns as their main reasoning behind enforcing this policy. His quick pit stop turned into an awkward standoff at the front counter over a bathroom he assumed was open to absolutely everyone. 30. Pulling a bottle of wine from a tote bag at a restaurant feels like a thoughtful way to enjoy a personal favorite. A couple in Illinois brought their own bottle to a dinner reservation at a restaurant that already served alcohol on its own menu. The waiter immediately flagged it as a problem. Bringing outside alcohol into a restaurant that serves its own drinks is illegal almost everywhere unless the establishment specifically holds a posted BYOB license allowing it. Liquor licensing laws exist to control exactly where and how alcohol gets served inside any given building. Their romantic dinner plan hit an unexpected snag the moment that bottle came out of the bag. 31. Charging guests a small cover fee at a backyard party feels like a clever way to cover the cost of snacks and drinks. A college student in Nevada hosted a weekend party at his rental house and asked everyone at the door for $5 cash. He figured it was no different than splitting a pizza bill. Charging admission at a private residence can actually require a business license in certain states, depending on how often the events happen and how much money changes hands. Officials sometimes treat repeated paid gatherings as unlicensed commercial activity hiding inside an ordinary home. His casual cover charge sat closer to running an unlicensed venue than hosting a simple house party among friends. 32. Cruising comfortably in the far left lane feels like a relaxed way to avoid heavy traffic merging on the right. A driver in Georgia stayed in the passing lane, well under the speed limit for several highway miles while faster cars piled up behind him. He assumed any lane was fair game, as long as he obeyed the limit. Over 20 states actually classify slower driving in the passing lane as a chargeable offense regardless of how closely the driver follows the posted speed limit itself. That lane exists specifically for passing rather than casual cruising, according to most state traffic codes. His relaxed driving style eventually earned him flashing lights and a ticket he never saw coming. 33. Plucking a handful of wildflowers during a scenic hike feels like the perfect souvenir from a beautiful afternoon outdoors. A hiker in Wyoming picked a small bouquet of bright yellow blooms while walking through a national park trail with her family. She figured nature was simply free for the taking. Wildflowers inside national parks are actually federally protected, and picking them can result in real fines issued directly by park rangers patrolling popular trails. Those protections exist to preserve fragile ecosystems that depend on every single flower staying exactly where it grows naturally. Her sweet little souvenir bouquet ended up costing far more than the price of any gift shop trinket ever could. 34. Selling an old car with a quiet wink and the words "as is" feels like a simple way to avoid any future hassle. A seller in Ohio sold his aging sedan to a stranger online while deliberately leaving out a known transmission issue he had been ignoring for months. He assumed as is covered everything completely. Many states still legally require sellers to disclose known defects regardless of how clearly the listing says, as is in bold letters at the very top. Buyers in several states have successfully sued sellers who hid problems behind that exact phrase during a private sale. His clever little loophole turned out to hold far less legal protection than he ever expected. 35. Chatting with truckers over a crackling CB radio feels like a nostalgic hobby straight out of an old movie. A retiree in Tennessee bought a walkie-talkie set online and started broadcasting on random frequencies just to pass the time during long evening drives. He never once considered licensing. Certain radio frequencies actually require a valid FCC license before anyone can legally transmit on them, even for casual recreational conversations between friends or strangers. The FCC still enforces these rules today, despite most people assuming radio chatter sits completely outside government oversight. His relaxing new hobby technically operated in a regulated airspace most casual users never imagined could ever get them into trouble. 36. Letting a teenager pick up extra shifts during a busy summer feels like a harmless way to earn some spending money. A father in Florida approved his 16-year-old's request to work late closing shifts at a local restaurant several nights in a row. He figured parental permission settled the matter completely. Child labor laws actually cap the number of hours and the specific times minors can legally work regardless of whether a parent personally approves the extra shifts. Employers who violate these limits can face real fines even when the teenager and the parents are both fully on board with the arrangement. That extra paycheck came with hidden legal risk neither the father nor the manager ever considered. 37. Singing happy birthday around a restaurant table feels like the most universal tradition in American celebration. A family in California sang the familiar tune as a waiter carried out a candle-lit dessert during a noisy birthday dinner. Nobody at the table thought twice about copyright law. The song was actually under copyright protection until 2016, which is exactly why many restaurants quietly switched to their own original birthday jingles for decades. Public performance of the original song could technically require royalty payments under the old copyright claim before a court finally settled the dispute. That cheerful tableside tradition carried a surprisingly complicated legal history hiding behind every single candle blown out. 38. Driving around with a small crack creeping across the windshield feels like a minor cosmetic issue worth ignoring. A commuter in Pennsylvania kept driving for weeks after a tiny rock chip slowly spread into a thin crack across his line of sight. He figured it was barely even noticeable. Several states actually treat any windshield crack as grounds for an automatic citation, regardless of how small or harmless the damage initially appears to the driver behind the wheel. Officers view compromised windshields as both a safety hazard and a structural integrity issue during accidents. His minor cosmetic annoyance eventually turned into an unexpected ticket during a routine traffic stop on his way to work. 39. Returning an unused gift card for cash refund feels like it should work the exact same way in every single state. A shopper in Vermont tried converting a leftover balance into cash at checkout, assuming federal law guaranteed that option everywhere. The cashier explained otherwise. Some states actually require businesses to offer cash refunds for small gift card balances, while other states allow stores to refuse that request entirely without consequence. Most shoppers assume one universal rule applies nationwide when the reality varies dramatically, depending purely on geography. His simple request for $5 leftover dollars revealed a patchwork of conflicting state laws nobody ever explains until the moment someone actually tries it. 40. Baking a batch of cookies to sell at a weekend farmer's market feels like the most wholesome small business idea imaginable. A grandmother in Michigan started selling homemade banana bread out of her kitchen every Saturday morning to neighbors and passing strangers alike. She assumed homemade simply meant exempt from rules. Most states actually require a specific cottage food permit before anyone can legally sell baked goods made inside a private home kitchen to the public. Health departments use these permits to track basic safety standards, even for something as simple as banana bread. Her sweet little side business needed official paperwork long before her first sale ever crossed the table. 41. Hammering a handwritten no trespassing sign onto a fence post feels like a guaranteed way to keep strangers off private land. A landowner in Montana nailed up a small wooden sign at the edge of his property, convinced it would hold up perfectly in court if anyone ever wandered through. He never checked the requirements. Many states actually specify an exact size font and wording for no trespassing signs, and anything falling short of those rules can make the sign legally unenforceable in front of a judge. Property owners across the country have lost trespassing cases purely because their signage failed a technical legal standard. His confident little fence post warning carried far less legal weight than he ever assumed. 42. Jogging across an empty street instead of walking to the corner crosswalk feels like the most logical shortcut imaginable. A runner in Ohio dashed across a quiet residential street with 0 cars in sight, figuring an empty road meant 0 consequences. A patrol car happened to be parked just around the corner. Jaywalking remains a real ticketable offense in most American cities, regardless of how deserted the street appears at any given moment during the day. Officers can and do issue citations purely based on crosswalk location rather than actual traffic conditions surrounding the pedestrian. His quick, empty street shortcut turned into an unexpected lecture and a fine he never imagined receiving for crossing thin air. 43. Raising a few backyard chickens for fresh eggs feels like the ultimate suburban self-sufficiency project. A homeowner in North Carolina built a small coop behind his garage and proudly introduced 5 hens to his quiet residential neighborhood that summer. A neighbor eventually called the city. Many suburbs actually ban or heavily restrict chicken coops within city limits without a specific permit, even for small personal flocks raised purely for eggs. Zoning laws written decades ago often classify backyard livestock the same way they classify full-scale farming operations, regardless of size. His charming little egg project ended up tangled in permit paperwork he never expected a handful of friendly hens to require. 44. Cranking up the car stereo on a sunny afternoon drive feels like the perfect soundtrack for summer. A driver in Florida blasted his favorite playlist with the windows rolled down while cruising slowly through his own neighborhood one warm evening. A neighbor flagged down a passing patrol officer. Most states classify excessively loud music audible outside a moving vehicle as a citable noise violation under local traffic and noise ordinances. Officers measure volume based on audibility from a certain distance, rather than any specific personal opinion about musical taste. His relaxed summer playlist quietly crossed into a legal violation the moment the bass carried past his own rolled-down window. 45. Packing leftover fireworks from a road trip purchase feels like bringing home a harmless souvenir from a fun summer vacation. A family in Massachusetts bought a bag of fireworks legally while visiting relatives in New Hampshire and tossed them in the trunk for the drive home. They never expected a problem at the state line. Crossing into a state that bans fireworks can make simple possession illegal even with a valid receipt proving the purchase happened somewhere else entirely. Several states enforce strict fireworks bans regardless of where the items were originally and legally bought just one state over. Their innocent vacation souvenir technically became contraband the moment their car crossed the state border. 46. Tossing a friend the car keys for a quick test drive feels like the most casual favor between two people who trust each other completely. A man in Texas let his buddy take his sedan for a short spin around the block without ever double-checking the insurance coverage attached to the vehicle. Minutes later, a minor accident happened. Letting someone drive your car without confirming proper insurance coverage can leave both the owner and the driver fully liable for damages during any resulting crash. Insurance companies frequently deny claims entirely when coverage details were never confirmed beforehand between the two parties involved. That quick favor between friends turned into a tangled financial mess neither one ever saw coming. 47. Pulling out a phone to film a nearby police stop feels like a completely protected right under the Constitution. A bystander in Illinois filmed an arrest unfolding on the sidewalk from just a few feet away, believing recording in public was always entirely legal. An officer asked him to step back immediately. Filming police in public remains legal nationwide, but many states still enforce a specific minimum distance rule that bystanders must maintain during active situations. Standing too close even while clearly recording can technically result in an obstruction charge, depending on the exact circumstances involved. His confident front row recording spot sat closer to a legal violation than he ever realized standing there. 48. Hosting a fun online giveaway for followers feels like the easiest way to boost engagement on social media overnight. A small business owner in California launched an Instagram raffle, asking followers to like, share, and comment for a chance to win a free gift basket. She never registered the contest anywhere. Hosting an unregistered raffle or giveaway can technically count as illegal gambling in several states depending on the specific entry requirements and prize value involved. Regulators distinguish between simple sweepstakes and unlicensed lotteries based on rules that most casual social media users never bother reading. Her playful little contest sat dangerously close to a gambling violation, hiding behind a colorful gift basket photo. 49. Snipping the tags back onto a worn dress before returning, it feels like a clever way to recover some quick cash. A shopper in New York wore a dress to a single event and carefully reattached the original tags before bringing it back to the store for a full refund. She assumed nobody could ever tell the difference. Retailers increasingly track and prosecute this exact practice as a form of retail fraud, sometimes called wardrobing, across multiple states with surveillance and return pattern tracking. Store policies and even local prosecutors have cracked down harder on this scheme as it grows more common nationwide. Her clever little refund trick sat much closer to a fraud charge than a simple shopping return. So there you have it. 49 completely ridiculous things you didn't know could get you fined, ticketed, or hauled into actual court. Because America really said, let's make jaywalking illegal, but let scalping run wild for decades. If this made you laugh, gasp, or panic about your own fish microwave habits, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and tap the notification bell so BrainFumble can keep ruining your sense of normal. Share this with the one friend who definitely jaywalks daily. Now drop a comment and tell me which one of these 49 laws genuinely shocked you the most.